All right. So now we're on our final piece of Highlander media. Well, our second final. We're going to do season 1 and season 2 of the Saturday morning cartoon that came out in the 90s. Yes, there's the Saturday morning cartoon of the Highlander franchise that came out in the 90s. It is exactly what you think it's going to be. So it stars our friend Quentin McLeod. Yep. It is like the far distant future. I think it's supposed to be like 700 years in the future, whatever that future is. And we have a return of our bestie Ramirez. Yep, he's around. I guess he didn't die or came back, or I don't know. But but, he's beloved, so he exists. The first episode starts off. We kind of get like a brief rundown of the 700-year future and all that stuff. And then we see Quentin hanging out with his sister, and they're talking about like a dream or a nightmare he had. Oh, yeah, a nightmare. So his nightmare is that when he was like a little kid, he was with like mascot character, which is this funny like bunny rabbit. I guess that's funny. Like not a bunny rabbit. He's like almost like a bear rabbit kind of thing. It's like this big kind of beefy looking, but it's got like rabbit ears or something. Cartoon mascot character. And then this strange man comes up and is like, "Oh, I'm looking for somebody. Who are you?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm Quentin. A different last name, like Dorothy or something." And he's like, "Oh, I'm looking for somebody. I guess I'll just wait around until that person shows up." And then he sits around till Quentin's like a teenager, I want to say, most likely, and becomes like an immortal, right? Because he is not woken to his like immortalness yet. And then the bad guy of this series is Cortan, I want to say. Yeah, Cortan. And he's this, like, white-faced looking, and, like, literally white-faced looking guy with, like, green armor. And then he's got, like, a sidekick who's got, like, a funny-looking, like, very, like, almost Clockwork Orange-style mask. It's not a penis, obviously. But it's, like, this cone, and then, like, a white mask on. And he's kind of like a goofy jester-style character. So as Quentin and his sister are like returning to the village, Cortan decides he wants to invade the Highland because he had some dream or something. The Highlands. And so he sends out like this general guy, and they go and like they start like fighting in the Highlands. And so Quentin is like, no. And so he runs out and he finds like his adopted mother, who he thinks is his real mother. And she says some cryptic shit to him, and then the guy, and then like someone grabs her, and then there's like the general there, and he's like, "I'm gonna fight you," and so he fights, and he obviously loses because he's like a teenager, and this guy's like a charred general, and then he becomes like an immortal, and then for some reason Cortan, all the way back in like his city or whatever, can like sense that, and so can Ramirez, who's just like taking a napopotamus by a tree, and so everyone senses Quentin like becoming an immortal or whatever. And even as, so he wakes up and he's like, "Oh, I thought I died." And his mom's there and she's like, "Died." And she's like, "You must save our people. You're not actually a Dorothy. You're a cloud." And he's like, "Oh, mommy." And then Ramirez shows up and is like, "Oh, yeah, I've been looking for you. You're an immortal, blah, blah, blah. We're going to fight." And then Cortan's like, "Oh, something, something." And then we get the backstory. So apparently, like 700 years ago, all these immortals, like all of them, except Cortan apparently, was like, "We're done playing this game. We don't want to do it anymore. So we're just not going to do it." So they went to Stonehenge and they like put their swords down and we're like, "We're not doing this anymore." And then Cortan's like, "I'm going to keep doing it." And they're like, "You're an asshole." And he's like, "Whatever." And so I guess he's ruled tyrannically for like 700 years. And the rest of the people are just like hanging out. Because Ramirez trains Quentin for a little bit and he's like, I gotta go rescue my people. And he's like, "Oh, you're going to die. Cortan's going to kill you. Something. You're young." And he's like, "Whatever you said, I'm more, I'll be fine." And Ramirez is like, "Yeah. Oh, roll my eyes. All right, fine, let's go talk to somebody." So they go to Cortan City and they meet up with Magnus. Magnus is one of the immortals. He's the immortal who did all the speaking in like the flashback. And he's like, "Ramirez, what are you doing? Why he's not ready. He's going to die. We waited 700 years. You're just going to throw it away." And then Quentin's like, "I do what I want." And so and he's like, "Fine, I'll help you." So he gives him, eventually he gets like his katana, right? Obviously, because he's in the cloud, so he has to fight his katana, which is fair. And so they go and they like free Ramirez and like free his people, but then Cortan shows up and Quentin's like, "I'll get you," and then Ramirez is like, "Get out of here, I'll do it." And then Magnus shows up, he's like, no, and then Cortan's like, "Oh, you're gonna break your oath?" And then Magnus shows up and is like, "No, I will do it." And he's like, "Wait, you're gonna break your oath?" And then Magnus is like, Ramirez, take the boy and leave. You must train him up. He must be more powerful so he can set the people free. There was some, like, prophecy or something about this whole thing going down. And so then they leave, and then Magnus fights, and he gets killed, and there's, like, the quickening, which, like, explodes all these tunnels or some crazy nonsense. And we end the first episode of the first season, which is, I think, 13 episodes, with Quentin, his little sister, Mascot, and Ramirez, like, standing by a lake, like, looking off into the distance. And it was pretty silly, I'm not gonna lie. So in the second episode, Ramirez wants to take Quentin to meet Stevenson, I think, who is, like, a jetterer. Which means he knows about electricity and stuff. They want to get some designs for, like, the electrical stuff that's going on at what's that guy's name? Condors. What's that guy's? Cortan. That's right. So for Cortan's base, we see his little, like, funny-nosed friend again in this episode, but then we don't see him again for a while. Marshall, I think is his name. Anyway, so Stevenson's another immortal character that, like, swore the oath or whatever, and he runs, like, a library somewhere with a bunch of people. So Ramirez, little sister, and Quentin all head over to the library. There, the Mascot character gets very concerned about everything that's going on, but no one wants to listen to him because he's just some dumb animal. They head inside, they get, like, a nice little meal, and before that happens, little sister finds some little boy, and they, like, screw around, throw kid each other, and chase each other around a little bit, which is important. That's actually pretty good writing. Because, like, why are they doing this, like, hijinks? Oh, it's important for later. Okay, good. So the meal is poisoned, and they all fall asleep. And then the general guy comes out with some of his cronies, and they grab Quentin to take him back to Morganda, which I think is Cortan's base of operations or something. And so when Ramirez and little girl, like, wake up, he uses, like, he makes, like, a flower ball or something and then lights it on fire and it explodes, blowing up the gate. Meanwhile, Quentin is there's one of the librarians that's taking him to Cortan is this girl Arya, and she explains to Quentin that the reason they're, like, betraying him is because Stevenson got taken as, like, a hostage, and if they don't do what they're told, like, they won't be getting him back. But she feels really bad, so she wants to help him after all. So then Ramirez fights some librarians, and then the little boy that his little sister was playing with before helps them, like, escape and explains what's going on, and they all head over to Morgana or Morganta or whatever it is. And there they meet up with Quentin and Arya, who have, like, escaped. And Stevenson's there, and they see him, and it's like, oh, he betrayed the oath or whatever. Now he's working for Cortan or whatever. And Cortan, like, swears to him that if anything goes wrong with this whole thing, he's dead, and, like, no, nothing's going to go wrong, something. Oh, also, the little boy hands Ramirez, like, the book that explains how the, like, hydroelectric plant or whatever works at Morganda. Anyway, so then who starts fighting who? So Cortan and Quentin start fighting, and then Arya hits something that, like, separates the rooms so that they can all run away and escape, and then Cortan goes up to Stevenson later on and, like, cuts off his head and takes his quickening and whatnot. And then Quentin has, like, the hots for Arya, obviously, because she's a hot redhead, and we know how this show works. But she's like, no, I have to go back and, like, run the library now and all this stuff. And then Quentin, like, kisses her, and then little sister gets jealous because she's like, she's got a big brother fetish. And so she, to get back at him, she kisses the boy, and it's like, ha ha ha, the rumor is, like, laughs, and that's the end of the episode. Episode 3 starts off with the Dundees. That's the crew that McLeod was rolling with, and, like, his little sister was a member of that family, right? Because he's adopted. So we see the Dundees. They're just, like, traveling, trying to figure out what to do, and then there's, like, this gang that, like, harasses them. And this gang is, like, they're chit-chatting with their boss because there's only 6 of them, and there's a whole bunch of Dundees, like, an unspecified number of many of them. And he's like, oh, don't worry, we have, like, the secret sword or whatever, the magic sword or something like that. And the magic sword's just a machine gun, which is not supposed to be any machine guns left because, it's been like 700 years and the technology, and Cortan has not allowed it because it'll make him weak or something. I don't know. No, there's no like real big explanation about the whole situation. But he has a machine gun, so he like shoots up them, and right when they're like getting shot up, Quentin and Ramirez and little sister show up, and so they're able to like rescue the guys and get away. But some of the Dundees are like they're like pack animals are all kidnapped or whatever. So that, and then the guy is like the gang leader is like super hot and bothered about like, oh, I can go to Moganda and kill Cortan now. And so Quentin, Ramirez and little sister stay with most of the Dundees and like help do magic on them, which is just like regular medicine and science, or medicine and surgery that Ramirez knows about. While Quentin leads some of the other Dundees into this base, which their base is in like an old aircraft carrier, which is cool. And so they head in there. Quentin gets the gun from like the priest, because there's some priest it's just like wearing some crazy robes or whatever, and he starts firing all the guys, and then he gets like, he's like, I'm gonna go kill Cortan, and Ramirez like finally shows up because he pulls a bullet out of somebody. He's like, oh no, it's a terrible thing, and he goes on a whole speech about how guns are terrible and how, you know, war never changes and stuff like that. And so he races over, and then him and Ramirez and the sister follows, even though she wasn't supposed to, and they get into like a huge argument, and Quentin is like, I'm full of power, I can do whatever I want with this thing, I can destroy Cortan and bring Morgana down and all this stuff. And then Ramirez is like, that's not the way, you gotta find balance, like you're too heated, and like he's like yelling at him, and they're yelling at each other. And then finally Quentin, like, his sister like touches his heart, and he like tosses the machine gun, and for some reason the machine gun just starts going off and it shoots his little sister in the arm. Like, it's just a scrap, but still. And he's like, oh no, it's the worst, I can't believe I was gonna let like the power of evil take over my mind, and you know, I wasn't going to be like pure of heart or some bullshit. So then they take the machine gun and they just like throw it in the ocean. Oh, there's a fun part at the beginning too, I forgot about. Like in the Highlander movie, while Ramirez is having Connor balance on a ship and stuff like that, he does like a similar thing here. He's got Quentin holding like a staff with like rocks on each side and balancing. And so that's a fun throwback and all that. Episode 4, we go on search for like another mortal. I think his name was Errol or something like that. Anyway, Ramirez shows Quentin some like bombs essentially that he makes, and he's like, oh, we can get some more of these, that'll help us in like our journey and help you learn more about like explosives and like how to utilize them stuff. But Errol's like the master of this. He has like an alchemist lab over in this like mine thing over there. So they head over there, they meet some of these miners, like chat with them for a bit, and then Melvin comes out. Who's Melvin? Melvin's like an assistant of Errol, but he's gone kind of crazy. You can tell he's kind of crazy. He like tosses some dynamite at them, kind of like to be like, I am the master of this now, Earl's gone. And they're like, oh, okay, maybe you can help us. He's like, yes, I can help you. So he's leading them along, and then he throws dynamite at them for realsy this time, and then jumps on the little girl who he keeps calling Dana, and Dana is like his daughter who was like kidnapped or killed or something. It's very ambiguous at this point by the hunters that Cortan sends out. And we get like a flashback where, you know, Cortan sent his forces over here, and Errol's like burning all the information about explosives so that Cortan get, and then he's saving the information for the Highlander, and so he destroys his lab and like runs off. And then Melvin kind of goes crazy because his daughter gets captured or whatever, and then he loses his mind, and then he thinks he's an immortal as well, even though he's not. And then when he sees the little sister, he thinks the little sister is Dana, his daughter, and so he like takes her, and they're gonna go fight Cortan and destroy him with like his explosives and stuff. So he takes little sister, and they go over there. And meanwhile, Ramirez and Quentin have like recovered enough so that they're able to get up and like, what's going on? Melvin or whatever went over here. They're like, oh, okay, let's go. So they head back over to Morganda again, or it's like Castle Grayskull over here. And when they get over there, they find. Oh no, yes, I'm sorry. I mentioned that Quentin was fighting Cortan before, and Arya saved them. I made a mistake in my head. And now, because I watched these episodes like back to back. This is where that happened. So I can't remember if I escaped Cortan before. I think they just ran off. But in this episode, this is where, so when Ramirez and Quentin show up to Morganda, they run into the actual Dana, who's like older now because it's been several years. And it's like, oh shoot, she's still alive. And then they talk about what's going on. And then Cortan comes down to like fight Melvin. He's like, I'm going to kill the shit out of you. And so they start fighting, and then Quentin starts fighting, and then Dana hits a switch, and that creates like a partition, and then they all are able to escape. And then they find out that Errol is still alive, and they go to him, and then Melvin's like super happy because he's like less crazy now because his daughter's still alive, and he's back with her, and then his master's still around, and everything turned out A-okay. So the next episode's kind of wacky. We get Ramirez and Quentin are fighting like in the dark or something, or Quentin's trying to like fight, but then Ramirez is like, no, you can't use your eyes. You got to feel it with your heart, or some bullshit or whatever. Anyway, over with Corton, he is like super pissed off because he wants to figure out where Quentin is, and he uses some sort of device to figure that out. And so he heads off to meet up with Quentin and Ramirez so they can have a fight. And as part of this whole deal, his little homie Marshall or whatever, he pretends to dress up like Cortan at some point, and then Cortan sees it and gets kind of pissed off and like yells at him or something. At some point, Connor gets like really, or not Connor, sorry. Connor's in this. Quentin gets really mad about how hard Ramirez is pushing him, and like, what's the point? And like, he can go fight Cortan now. He needs to go fight Cortan now. All this kind of like bullshit with that and whatnot. And then we get like a flashback, and then Ramirez is like, you need to honor the McLeod name. And then we go back in time and we see Connor's death for like the third time. So Connor McLeod was one of these guys who was going to go out and swear never to do anything again. But then when Corton's like, I'm not doing it, Connor's like, I'm not doing it either. So he's an oath breaker. I don't know why these shows love oath breakers so much. But so he breaks his oath so that he can go fight Corton, and then he loses. And then he gives his like sword to the future for like and he's the one who like curses Corton that like in the future McLeod will come and defeat him and whatnot, a Highlander. Anyway, so then Quentin runs off because he wants to fight Cortan now, or Cortan finds him or something on like some ship in the desert, or they're just like out doing stuff. I don't know, man. They were in a ship in the desert last episode, so I'm trying to. I don't think that's fine. Anyway, so they fight, and then Quentin's about to lose, and then like they get separated because Quentin like falls or something, and then Quentin's gonna go fight him some more, but then Ramirez like shows up and like knocks him out and drags him off, and then they're like resting in the desert, and then Quentin like runs off again, and Corton like tracks him again, and then he goes to like find him, and this time Quentin's like blinded himself, or not like, poked his eyes out, but he's wearing like a mask or like a thing or whatever, so he can use like the power of the Highlander force to sense Cortan to like track him down. And then Cortan's like, I have an idea. And then Cortan gets kind of concerned because it seemed like Quentin was getting better at fighting, and that if he fights him head on, he might lose at this juncture because of like the flashback or Connor or the curse, or I don't know. He seems concerned, and so he gets Marshall to drive out in like a tank dressed like him, and then Quentin goes to fight him, and Marshall's just like flapping around and can't like stand up straight, and Quentin's like, what the heck? And then Cortan shows up, and they're like, aha, I got you, Highlander, I tricked you, now you will die. And then Ramirez shows up, and he's like, aha, Cortan, I tricked you, you can kill him, but then I'll kill you, and then we'll all be dead. And I was like, okay. And so you should just head back because you look like a fool. And Cortan's like, ruff, 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 ruff. And so he heads back, he gets in the tank and drives off, and then Marshall like runs after him. And then Quentin like apologizes and said he wants to be better and learn how to be a true Highlander or some bullshit like that. Episode 6 is a lot funner, I gotta say. So we start off with Quentin and Ramirez like practicing fighting on like a cliff. Not a cliff. It's like a building or something, like a... They're up high. The point is that they're up high and that Quentin is afraid of heights. And so this becomes like a central theme of the show. And so they fight a little bit, and then Quentin keeps being concerned, and Ramirez like pushes him off. He's like, you're immortal. What are you afraid of? Which is fair. So we then go over to Mortana, where the general guy is fighting like another general guy, and they're like getting really hot and bothered. And then Marshall gets concerned and tells Cortan, he's like, tell him to stop fighting. This is ridiculous. I don't need my generals like fighting each other. And killing one of them, and I lose some like power or whatever. And then Marshall has an idea that, hey, how about we get them both to get a slave, and the slaves can fight, and then that will determine who wins. Cortan's like, that's a genius, and I like it. So then Marshall goes to propose to the generals, are a big fan of that idea. So they both go off to get like their slaves to fight. And then one of the generals, I think the main general guy, Iraq, I think is his name or something, he goes off to this like village that is like high up on the cliffs or in trees or something. And there he captures like the son of like an old powerful warrior guy, and then he sends a message to the father saying, you can come fight as my slave in this arena, or I'm gonna like kill your son, and I'm gonna make him fight. He's a piece of shit, so he's gonna die. And then right around this point is Ramirez and Quentin show up because they're here to see Olak, I think is his name, who is the immortal here. He's one of the immortals that he's got to get like his powers from. And he's already lost powers from like 2 immortals, because one was like a betrayer who got killed by Corton, and the other one, Magnus, like fought. And so that guy died. So they talk about everything that's going on, and then the sister like does something where she's gonna fall from a bridge, and then Quentin could like save her, but he's scared of heights. So then the father character has to like go and save, and then he gets injured, and now the son's fucked, and everyone gives him a hard like Oleg's like, I don't know if I can trust this Quentin guy. He's like scared of heights. He's a little bitch. And Ramirez is like, that's true. You should still trust him. And so then Quentin like sneaks off, as he loves to do, and he goes and he breaks into like Mortana so that he can switch places with the son. And so then he fights the other slave, and he ends up like beating that guy, but then they like realize it's him, and he like runs off, and Cortan's like, no, blah, 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 and then something. So then he heads back, and then Oleg like realizes that, you know, he is worth it, that he has overcome, and that, let's see, the capture son impressed. Oh, then that impresses him so much that they go out and they do like a ceremony, and instead of like losing his head, he just like uses immortal magic to transfer his quickening to Quentin. So Quentin gets like the ability to not be afraid of heights anymore, and to like understand flying. And each one of these immortals has like a specialty. His is like, he has like flying machines or some shit. And then the bomb guy was like bomb shit. So I guess he transferred his. I don't remember that happening, but they did talk about it. So this we actually see like a full on like, woo, and then Quentin's like, wow, that was awesome. And after he does that, he's like, oh, I'm free. I'm not an immortal anymore. I'm finally free. And I'm like, what the fuck? That's crazy ass show. Episode 7 focuses on like a whole island full of women. And it's not like an Amazonian situation. It's that all the men were captured as like slaves already. So none of them are around. So so they're like doing stuff, hanging out. Quentin and Ramirez are being chased by the immortal hunters, or the Highlander hunters, or whatever. It's just General Iraq, I think it's the name, and his like crew of goons. So they fight them off, and then they run, and they get to this area, and Quentin's a little hurt. He'll be fine. He's an immortal. So this, I think it was the sister got hurt. Maybe, yeah. Anyway, so they get there and like, oh, we need some help. And the ladies are like arguing about what they should do. And finally they're like, you brought the hunters here. And it's like, no, we're actually good. We're going to help you out. And so they finally let them in. And then one of the girls gets accused of being in love with like Ramirez, which is fair. Because it's supposed to be Sean Connery. And eventually they explain that like, oh, you know, they're having a hard time because they want to sail out of there, and they have like plans for like, there's like an island elsewhere where they can get away from Corton and live like peaceful lives, but like all their men were taken away. And then Ramirez is like, we can help you get your men. It's like, no, they're already gone. And we just want to get the fuck out of here. Well, you know, we got like little boys, so they'll grow up and eventually have more kids or something. I don't know. And it's not really like firmly thought out exactly how they're going to perpetuate this situation. But they want to get away, and he's like, well, okay, well, what about a ship? And it's like, oh, we're like the league, we're like Crete or whatever. We're like the land of making boats, and we actually have a boat. We just got to fix it up a little bit. And Ramirez is like, oh, we'll help you with that. Meanwhile, the Eric and his guys, they capture some old lady and some boy. Who there's a lady, Melanie or something, who that's her mom and like son, and so she's distraught, and she doesn't trust Ramirez and Quentin. And so Quentin's like, oh, and so she goes and like she betrays them while they're like walking around the ship talking about how they're going to make improvements and how they're going to get out of here, and how Quentin and Ramirez can use like their knowledge to like help them or something, or their skills or whatever. And then they find out that like they're being betrayed, and so Quentin goes out to like rescue the mother and the son, while Ramirez like blocks off like the secret pathway that will get like the hunters inside the island or something, because there's like, it's an island, but there's like a secret passageway, I guess, that the lady like trades for her mother and son. But then of course the people of Cortan are just complete assholes for no reason, and so they throw her in the brig as well. So Quentin comes out, he beats up some goons, he rescues them, and then they're running back to the island, and they're about to be rescued. But then, like, the girl, for some reason, like, the one who betrayed them, like, runs back to, like, distract Eric, and Quentin's like, what the fuck are you doing that? So he runs back to stop her, but then she gets gat, and then he has to run back, and he has to, like, get pulled up on this ship as the ship starts to take off, and then they sail away to freedom, and Eric's like, oh, shucks. So episode 8 takes us to Lancerley. He's he's like the general historian. And the episode starts, Ramirez is just telling Connor the history of like the world, and he's like, I don't give a fuck about the history of the world. I care about the Dundees and all this other stuff. And they talk about the Dundees a little bit, how they have like some dance style. that they've been like perpetuating. That's like a beautiful dance. And then Ramirez like laughs. He's like, that's actually a combat style that they raised teaching you. So that's very clever of them, because Corton like outlawed fighting or learning how to sword fight or anything like that, so he can maintain control of the whole situation. And so they talk about that, and he's like, I'm going to take you to Lancelay there, or Lance. It's like Lancelay. I think it's Lancelay. Lancelay, who's going to give you the quickening that has all like the historical knowledge and stuff. So they head over there, and there's like a whole bunch of librarians and shit, and they're all like very paranoid about anybody. And so they get in there, and they get like Ramirez and Quentin get like accosted by them, and they're about to get like thrown out or killed or something when Lancelay shows up, and he's like, oh, my friend. And then him and Ramirez like hug it out, and they talk about everything that's going on, and they kind of share some information. Meanwhile, Cortan's like, he's gathering all the quickenings. I better send Iraq. Who's they going to go to next? Oh, Lancelay. I'll send him that way. So then Iraq, with a huge crew with like a bunch of tanks and stuff, they all head over to Lancelay's place, and they're like invading it, and like his people are trying to hold him off, and Ramirez is helping, and finally Lancelay's like, all right, Quentin, let's go here. And he goes, and he like holds his sword, and they both hold the sword, and they do like the quickening, and the quickening like explodes. It's kind of like the end of Search for Vengeance, where the whole place like kind of explodes, like the whole the whole library like starts collapsing, and everyone's running away, and then like it pushes all the bad guys out, and like it crushes like tanks, and like Eric like kills a guy and like jumps into one of the tanks. He's like, I'm getting the fuck out of here. And so he takes off, and so then Quentin gets all like the historical knowledge. It's like, wow, that was amazing, I know so much shit now. And then Ramirez is like, it's good to know shit. That's episode 8. All right, so next episode we're back with the Dundees, who I like. I like the Dundees. They're pretty cool. So they have came to like some swampy land for some reason, and they're getting sick with the malaria. They don't know it's the malaria. They think it's some sort of plague or whatever. And they run into Scott, who's like the leader of like a whole different crew of, I don't know, Highlanders or just people, I guess. And Scott is like, no, you're bringing like a curse. It's a curse. You're cursed. And like, no, we're not cursed. And they're like, well, we got more people than you, so you better let us like come here and stay here and use your well, or we're gonna fucking kill all of you. And then Scott's like, man. Meanwhile, Ramirez, Quentin, and Clyde, the little sister, that's her name. I finally saw it somewhere, so now I will remember it because I'm a visual learner. But they come rolling in through the swamp too, and they're just like having a grand old time and talking about something. And then I think they got word from like the Dundees to come help or something, help resolve a problem. I think that's what happened. Yeah. So then they're coming through the swamp, and then Clyde gets the old, I think, which one do I want? I think I want this one. Sorry, I'm trying to like drive somewhere. Clyde gets the old malaria as well, and so she gets sick, and so they get to the village, and they want to like, oh no, so she gets bit by a mosquito, and then they go and they're trying to like help out, and Ramirez is using some of his future / past medical knowledge to like help people out. And then Clyde gets sick, and it's like, oh no, because he sent her to get like water, and the well's locked up, and she's like, who did this? And Scott's like, I did this. They're all cursed. I don't want them here. And she's like, you're an asshole. And he's like, you're an asshole. And then she gets sick. And then Quinn's like, I'll do anything. And then Ramirez is like, oh, there's a guy named Ilak, might just be Ilak, who is like around here, and he is the immortal. He's the Jetterer, which the Jetterer is the name of all the immortals who have like special powers they need to give Quentin so he can be the Highlander and defeat Corton. That's his name. I keep forgetting his name because he like is barely in these episodes. Meanwhile, Corton, he's yelling at Iraq, his general, for being incompetent and not being able to find the Highlander. So then he puts like scientist guy in charge of like him, and he's like, you'll do what he says. And the guy's like, go do this. And he sends him off to like the swamp to like find where exactly the Highlander's at. And it's like, wow, that guy's like already much smarter than Eric. Eric's like a fool. And so he's getting ready to do that. But meanwhile, Scott like rolls up because Scott is actually an ex-hunter who lost his arm, and so he wants to get back in the good graces of Corton. Well, mostly he wants to give information to Iraq so Iraq can come get the Highlander and get rid of all of the Dundees, get him out of his little land because he hates them. And so that's like that's his deal. So then Iraq's like, oh, we're gonna go over here. He's like, oh, we're gonna go do that right now. And he's like, no, he didn't go there. He went to like this other place where Ilak is. And so he's like, okay, let's go there. Meanwhile, Ramirez and Quentin very easily get over to Ilak. Oh, at some point, Quentin's like walking around looking at stuff, and he finds, Clyde. Is it Clyde? But Clyde's sick. Maybe this is before she got sick. At some point, because I think it is Clyde. No, I think it's Quentin. So Quentin is going to he like goes to Scott's house to like have a conversation with him. He's not there, and then like a little mascot character like senses something in the ground or something. And so anyway, I can't remember who it is, but someone opens up the thing. It's either Quentin or Clyde, and they find the hunter uniform. They're like, oh no, he used to be a hunter, and then we get the information that he's a hunter. So I got that out of step. Anyway, so Quentin and Ramirez like race off to Ilax to like so he can get the knowledge to like cure malaria, and so they head over there, and then they do like the quickening exchange, and then Quentin is like, I know how to cure malaria now, and so he starts like doing stuff with herbs and stuff, and he creates a cure, and then he puts it away in his little potion thingy, and then him and Ramirez head out, and they get surrounded by Eric and his guards, and they capture him, and then Eric puts Scott in charge of guarding them in the back of this tank troop carrier thingy, and so they're back there, and they're trying to talk him into like, hey man. Oh, and then we find out that he's also sick now. He's also got the plague, and then Quentin's like, I can cure you, man, but if you don't help out or if you do some bullshit like you're doing, like it's not going to work out good for you because you're going to be in a lot of trouble. And he's like, finally he like gives in because he wants to like save his people and the sister and everything. And so he like frees them. And so when the general stops, they'll like hop out and they have like a big fight. Oh, no. What happened was some of the Dundies followed Quentin and Ramirez. And then when they saw everything going down, they like attacked the caravan, and then they were able to get out, and Scott released them, and then all of them raced back, and the guy's like, I'm a fool again, and so he gets to go back and like apologize for being an idiot, and then him and the scientist guy get into a fight, but Cortan is like, well, I'm not gonna. I need both of them, unfortunately, because Marshall's like, what? You were very nice. The punishments you just out were very minor, and he's like, yes, I need them both still, unfortunately, but soon I will destroy everyone. I'll kill everyone. I'll be alone in the earth. I was like, what? Why? Anyway. Meanwhile, they cure the malaria, and everyone is happy and gets along, and hooray, we solved the problem. Episode 10 focuses on botany. So Quentin and Ramirez are just like practicing sword fighting or something, and then they start talking about, or like, Quentin actually might have just been resting in this episode. Anyway, it doesn't matter. They start talking about botany. What's botany? A study of plants. Plants are important. Oh, no. I remember how it starts. So it starts off, Quentin's climbing up this cliff because Clyde, his sister, saw this flower she wanted. And then Ramirez is like, you shouldn't pick that up. Trust me on this. And he's like, no, I'm going to do what I want. And so he grabs it and like burns his hand, and he falls off. And Clyde and Ramirez laugh at him because they're assholes. And it's like a stinging. It's something. It's like 100 times more pain, like burning pain than like nettles, a stinging nettle or whatever. And it's like, oh man, why don't you tell me? It's like, I told you not to touch it. It's like, you need to study botany. What's botany? Oh, we're gonna go see. I wrote his name down because it's really stupid. Sahevi. So we're gonna go see Sahevi. Because he's like the botany immortal, the generous. So they head off, and it's like cold. They're in the Arctic or something, and then all of a sudden there's like a beautiful jungle, and it's like, wow, look at this. And then Ramirez is like, isn't it incredible what plants can do? Plants are the best. And I'm like, that is true, but this is a weird message in the show. Like, I don't know what the point of this was. Anyway, so they head down there, and then immediately Ramirez gets caught by like a thorn. I don't think I wrote that down. They kept calling it like a thorn plant, and it's just like a man-eating. It's just like a Venus flytrap, but for like human beings. So grab Ramirez up, and then him and Clyde head forward. They meet this kid, who takes him back to his village. And when they get there, the village is the elder. The elder of the village is having an argument with some asshole who's like, we should burn the whole village down. And he's like, and the elder's like, what? No, we're not going to burn the whole village down. We're not. I mean, we should burn the whole forest down because of like the thorn bushes or whatever. Yeah, they call them like thorn. I don't know what I call it. Anyway. Thorn pods. They call them thorn pods. That's what it was. And it's like, what? That's stupid. Like, what? And so finally, the elder's like, I'm going to go check on Sahevi and see if he can help us. Like, oh, Sahevi's the one who caused these problems in the first place. He's the devil. And so Quentin is like, no, I will go with the elder and talk to Sahevi because I gotta get his like quickening anyway, so I can learn about plants. And Clyde, you wait here with your friend, and yada yada. So they go. And then Clyde and her new boyfriend, the other little kid they just met, are like hanging out, having a good old time when they see that the guy who was going to go burn the forest decides he's going to burn it in with like the fire water. And we find out later the fire water is like kerosene, and he's going to light the whole forest on fire. Anyway, so Quentin and the elder, like they're chit-chatting. They get to Sahevi, and then Quentin gets like real mad at Sahevi for some reason and like attacks him immediately, and Sahevi keeps running away and be like, no, you got to trust me. I didn't do this. I didn't make yes, I made the thorn pods, but normally the thorn pods are eaten by like the red something, and then the red wasps. They don't call them wasps, but the red wasps, but for some reason the red wasps aren't doing anything. And finally like Quentin like calms down enough where he's like, oh, just give me the quickening. And so he gives him the quickening, and he's like thinking about it. He's like, oh, hey, look up there. The snow has like blocked. they literally say the snow has blocked the path for like the red wasp to get out so they can do their like thing, which is to eat all the thorn pods. But then when they finally get up there to like release the red things to like save everybody, because people keep getting caught, right? And the guy who's going to set fire gets caught. I think Heavy at some point gets caught, so it's like Quentin all by himself. No. The Elder gets caught. I think even Clyde gets caught by these thorn pods. They're like out of control. So they get up there and it's just like a rock in the way, and it's like, that's not the snow. Like, that's just a big rock. And so they push the rock out of the way, and then the red thing, right before Quentin gets like eaten by thorn pods, they come out and they like kill all the thorn pods like instantaneously, and so everyone's reunited, everyone's super happy, and hooray, we did it, we saved the day. This next episode gets pretty deep. Like, no joke, like shockingly pretty deep. Because it deals with nuclear bombs, and we get a flashback to like Hiroshima. No, I think it's Nagasaki. Flashback to Nagasaki. Because the Jetterer, who is like the main focus of Quentin gaining knowledge this time, is the Sandman. I think his actual name is Prometheus, but his knowledge is like nuclear power. And so the episode starts off with Ramirez and Quentin like riding through the desert, and Ramirez talking about how this used to be a beautiful garden and whatnot, and then we skip over to these like blue-skinned guys dressed like Mamelukes, and they're chit-chatting, and then Ramirez shows up and like, oh, Ramirez, we gotta tell the Sandman, I'm here to see the Sandman, we got the Highlander, this is the Highlander, Quentin, and everyone's like, ooh, very good, and this one guy's like, yes, I will go tell him immediately, and he immediately runs off to Eric, the general guy, and is like, time to betray my people, and betray this and betray that, and he's like, tells him what's going on, and that where Quentin is, and then Eric like kills that guy because he's a betrayer, which is like the right thing to do, so Arak did the right thing this time, but then he tells Corton about what's going on and where that Quentin's going to be over with Prometheus and stuff. And so then Quentin learns about the nuclear blast and nuclear energy and nuclear power and whatnot, and then he freaks the fuck out and like runs off with Clyde, his sister, and he's running around being Satapotamus. Corton shows up, and then Corton, Ramirez, and Sandman have like a back and forth, and then Ramirez like, you can't give him the information, and then Quentin or Sandman's like, no, I'm so tired, because he's all mutated and shit, right? And so he's like, I can't live with this pain anymore. If Quentin won't take it, then I'll give it to him. I'm done being alive, yada 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 yada. And so then Cortan gets like access to like the nuclear reactor, or not, it's like a nuclear bomb silo or nuclear missile silo, and so he's about to like set off, or he sets off like a nuclear strike, and then Quentin finally like grows a pair of balls after his sister like chides him a bunch, and so they rush back, and then he gets the quickening from Sandman, and then he's able to like stop the nuclear blast from like going off, and then they all vamoose, and Prometheus like blows up, uses the nuclear blast to destroy the entire like facility and destroy all the nuclear weapons and all that stuff, and kill himself and whatnot, so that he can finally be dead and be happy. Like, this is a cartoon for children, man. Fuck. Next up, we have the search for Branna. Branna is the immortal Jetterer who is in charge of languages or something. Anyway, he's a coward and kind of a bitch. And the episode starts off with Quentin Ramirez. Ramirez is like speaking Spanish to Quentin, and he's like, I don't speak your Espanol. And Ramirez is like, that's the problem. That's where we're going to go to Branna. So meanwhile, the hunters have raided Branna's hometown, and he hides behind his like Jetterer oath to not be like damaged or attacked or whatever. And then the hunters like grab a bunch of people up, including Branna's lover. Ooh. And in fact, Eric is like, oh, I like this woman, she's hot, I'm going to take her for myself. So he keeps her, and then the scientist guy, Asclepios or something, he's like, I'm going to report Eric to Cortan for like keeping one of the slaves and not turning him over or something. Ramirez and Quentin show up. They have like a back and forth with Branna. He's like kind of an asshole. And they decide they got to like go to Morganda to save all the abductees, all the people that got kidnapped. And he says that with something about, I can't remember, like the reasoning why is like kind of shady, right? He's kind of like holding information like about like other Jetterers or something, but like he doesn't have it, someone else has it or something. And the reality of he's coming because he wants to rescue his lover, right? So they roll over there, they capture Eric or Arak and force him to like help them by like helping with the abductees and all that stuff. And then Corton like shows up, and they're about to fight, and then Brianna's like, I'll hold them off while you guys get out of here. And so Brianna like holds them off a little bit, and then like some vendors in like this town or whatever, these like random dudes, like they end up stopping Cortan, and so everyone is able to like, all the abductees are able to get free. Brianna gets free, Quentin and McLeod and Ramirez get free. Everything's going great, and then Cortan like harasses Arak and Akleopios about like the whole situation, and Arak is able to like convince, quote unquote, Cortan that he had nothing to do with like the escapee, or he didn't keep no slaves. See, they didn't capture me and force me to help them. None of that shit happened. And so he does, because whatever. And then the scientist guy gets like all butthurt about it. Later, Quentin finally receives the fucking quickening from Brianna, and then Brianna's like, I'm so happy now I can be immortal and live with my hot wife here until we both die. Nice. And for the final episode of the season, we get like it's actually a pretty good episode, right? For like a Saturday morning cartoon. So we start off. How do we start off? Well, anyway, at the beginning, there's a flashback. So we see Cortan and Ramirez like training and practicing and whatnot under the guidance of Yoshida. I wrote it down. Hold on. Yoshida, who's like some sort of like, hippie monk guy who's like all about like training and peace, and like he's against tyranny and whatnot. And at some point during this like training session or whatever, Cortan tries to actually behead Ramirez, and so Yoshida stops it and like banishes him forever, right? But he also like kicks Ramirez out. And so back to the present, Ramirez is like telling this story, and he's getting all butthurt about the situation. And then Clyde calls him out for being like, "You're just mad 'cause he kicked you out of his dojo or whatever." And he's like, meh, meh, meh. On their way, they meet this guy. Did I write his name? No, I did not. All right, they meet this guy who is like, "Oh, thanks for rescuing me, something. Oh, Quentin, you're the Highlander. That's so great. You should start, you should fight Cortan now. If you had an army, I bet you could rise an army." And then Ramirez is like, "That's a bad idea. Let's go to Yoshida." And Quentin, being like a teenager, is like, "No, I'm going to do it." So him and this guy like vamoose out of there, and they go to like this place so they can like bar brawl. And after he beats up some goons, they're all like, "Yeah, we will follow you." They start getting like an army together, and then Ramirez comes to like talk him down, and they go back and forth, and there's like yelling and stuff. And then there's like a whole thing where like this I can't remember, this like blonde guy has a sword. It's the same sword Cortan used like back in the day. And so it's like, oh, is he working for Cortan? This is all a setup to get to trick Quentin into going and sacrificing himself. And there's like back and forth about that and yelling, and then like some discussion, and then we finally find out after all this like nonsense that this whole thing, that this kid actually like works for Yoshida, and that this whole thing was like a test for Quentin to see if he would like, if he had ultimate power, if he becomes like the Highlander and defeats Cortan and becomes like the master of the world, will he be a tyrant like Cortan? And unfortunately, Quentin failed? He didn't fail completely, but he didn't, he wasn't able to recognize like all the shady shit that was going on and make a better decision. But he's young, and so Yoshida's willing to give him a chance. I think first he has to go get all the other quickenings from all the other jetterers and like show that he can make changes and that he has like a true heart and whatnot. And then if he does, he can return and he can get the quickening from Yoshida last. And then it's like, all right, we're going to do it. And we'll see where that goes in season 2, which is almost doubling in episodes. This was like 13 episodes. I think season 2 is like 22 episodes, roughly. So 10 more episodes. That'll be a lot more stuff to talk about. But, 90s cartoon, it's not bad. I watched a lot of shady 90s cartoons. I think Mad Max, or like the Conan one they had with like the Phoenix and the Hot Babe and the Wizard, was probably my favorite Saturday morning cartoons. But, like DuckTales and Gummy Bears and all that other shit. That was fantastic. But this is pretty good. Like, no lie. Like, I never heard of this. I definitely would have watched it, and I definitely would have enjoyed it as like a child in like the 80s. Or this might have come out in the 90s. That's probably why I didn't see it. It might have been like past my time. When did this come out? Let's see if it tells me here somewhere. I'm not going to ask Gemini. That's like too much work right now. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it came out in the 90s. But it was good. I enjoyed it. And so I'm excited to see where season 2 goes. If it like falls off a cliff or if it maintains, it's like, like a 6 out of 10. Like most Saturday morning cartoons from the 90s took place. But yeah, go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and I will catch you guys later. Bye.